Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Federica. So the second thing I would like to say before the start is to have a look at the Facebook page called Distant Talks to see the others events planned for June. And Distant Talks is a cycle of conversation that we as PhD students in urban and regional development, we have organized in order to discuss our research topics, our research interest with some experts. Well, after this very brief organizational communication, I can introduce myself and of course our today's guest. So I am Francesca Bragaglia. I'm a third year PhD student, and together with my colleague Federica Rotondo, I will coordinate the 7th Distant Talk, in which we will talk about social innovation and energy transition. And we will talk about that with Giorgos Koukoufikis. Sorry for my very bad pronunciation of your name, sorry. And of course, we will thank him very much for accepting to participate in today's meeting. We are very glad that you are here. Giorgos is part of the Joint Research Center of the European Commission in the unit Knowledge for Energy Union. And he is also an expert specifically on energy communities, in particular in the Greek context. And probably I think that he will talk about also this expertise during his discussion. Just to introduce very briefly a bit more the meeting, but very generally, because then I will leave the floor to Federica. I would like to start with a question that I have been asking myself since the very beginning of my PhD path, actually, that is, what is social innovation? And of course, there is no single answer to that, no single definition, because there are different perspectives, different opinions about this topic. But in the field of urban studies, I think that one of the most interesting conceptualization of this concept is the one proposed by Frank Mullert and his research group, which identify 3 main characteristics of social innovation. So social innovation aims at the satisfaction of human needs, which are unmet by the state and by the market. It changes social power relations between actors, and it empowers people, local communities. So social innovation in this perspective has a clear bottom-up or bottom-link connotation, but but especially after the 2008 global economic crisis, social innovation has also become a very pervasive notion among policymakers in order to address a wide range of contemporary issues in a co-produced manner. So with, of course, the public institution energy, but also with civil society one. And I've recently written an article on the fact that nowadays social innovation can be considered a sort of magic concept, a sort of magic recipe, as also theorized by Pollitt and Hupe. And in this sense, social innovation is a sort of contemporary panacea. And as a consequence, there is also the risk of being used as a mere rhetorical discourse and to be easily manipulated in this sense. However, in this talk, we don't want to tackle this kind of critical aspects, even if it is very fascinating path of research. But instead, we would like to focus our discussion on the perspective of social innovation in a very specific field, which is the field of energy transition. Energy transition is also the topic of research of Federica, so I will leave the floor to her that will illustrate us the 2 macro issues, the 2 macro questions on which we want to stimulate Giorgos today. So thank you, and Federica, up to you.
So thank you, Francesca, for this introduction. As we said, the main idea is try to look at the main relation in between the concepts and issues of social innovation in the specific field of urban energy transition. But the very first order of question we want to pose our guest looks exactly about this this relation. In fact, low carbon energy transition in urban context generally refers to the shift of contemporary society towards new forms of energy systems. And in this sense, many authors agree upon the fact that this transition in cities recalled complex processes that are processes that intersect multiple dimensions that are not just related to technical and economic issue, but they are also related to the to social cultural changes, spatial governance and planning. So when we go to the specific field of urban energy transition, we pose ourselves the question of which specific practices are today considered as socially innovative. And we confronted ourselves with a context in which we deal with the liberalization and slow decentralization of the energy production that leads to forms of collective consumption or, for example, also domestic production of energy. So in this sense, the first order of question look at those specific practices that might be considered as socially innovative, and in particular, what is the relation of those practices with the contexts, the specific urban, institutional, and political contexts in which they developed. And so in this sense, also the differences among different countries, in particular in this case, especially considering our guest looking at the European context. The second order of question look at one of the main characteristics that has been recognized in low carbon energy transition that slowly emerged in urban government agenda as a sort of multi-actor process that attract the interest not just of public institutions, but also of private actors, such as financial institution or energy agency, and together with non-governmental organization and third sector, and of course the citizen. So from one side, we have more consolidated actors that interact, from the other side with new actors that are involved in the decision-making process of energy-related plan and projects, bringing in a way to the public arena different interests and point of view. So this complexity of actors and of course interest put under question the need not just for researchers, but also for practitioners to look at the role, for example, of external actors, such as governmental, government bodies, but also non-state actors, and how do they relate with the different political and institutional assets. And at the same time, it pushes some issues around different forms of local communities' involvement and the collaboration between different parties. So I will now leave the floor to our special guest. Thank you, Giorgos.
Many thanks. I would like to really thank Federica and Francesca for the invitation, and all of you that you take this afternoon to be here. I'm Giorgos Koukoufikis. I have a PhD in urban studies. I've been part of the Italian research community during this period of my PhD. Then I moved to Belgium, and currently I'm working at the GRC. It's a joint research center of the European Commission. It's, as we call it, the in-house service, research service of the Commission. And the role there, my role there, and the role of the institution is to provide insights for policymaking, research insights. So in our department, we do work on the field of energy and the energy transition in particular, and we have a small team there that works on the social aspects of it. And our main work is to do knowledge management. So we have a bird's eye view of what's happening in Europe, and we follow the research agenda projects, and we digest this knowledge, and we create reports, and through a sense-making process, we try to give inputs for policy making. That's the official part of the role. In particular, because I've been trained as part of my PhD in Frank Muller's team, I work very closely to issues of social innovation, also in terms of energy. So today I'm invited here because I have already produced a couple of outputs as part of my role in the GRC related to social innovation. One is a report that looks on some case studies around Europe of social innovative projects and does a review of what is already out there in terms of theory and practice. The other is a contribution to the debate over the term, actually, and there is a output, a small two-pager, where I explain what is social innovation and energy transition, or better, I give a definition. That means that I will start today from that, the definition of the social innovation and transition. And here I want to say that I was originally planning to have a presentation, but then I thought I shouldn't have a presentation because I need to imitate a bit the talk part of this project. And because with Loris in particular, we know that the best part of the academic experience and where you gain actually a lot is when you interact via dialogue with colleagues, especially after work hours. So I would like to have an open floor. You can interrupt me, you can ask things, I follow the chat, and I will try to speak and create a narrative as it goes, trying to answer the questions Federica and Francesca had mentioned, and of course, giving inputs from things I've seen the last 1.5 years, 2 years that I work on the specific issue. So having said that, I guess that if you are here, you already are a bit familiar with the concept of social innovation. You know that is a very debated concept. You know that is context dependent. Context means research, practice, area, space. That we have different points of view, political agendas, and understandings over it. And yeah, as everyone says, we have the last decades, especially after the crisis of 2008, 2009, we have an abundance of research and definitions, both from the social sciences and humanities side and the STEM part, science, technology, and engineering. And this debate inevitably started touching the debate on the energy transition. That is of particular importance because we have a movement there that we haven't seen before. The energy sector is a very peculiar sector because energy is something that covers a basic need. And the debate about the energy transition beyond the climate debate, beyond the technical aspects of it, it's a fundamentally social debate because it's a debate about decentralization and decentralization processes. And this happens in an era after the advocates of centralized systems had lost, let's say, ground. And now we are in a process of decentralization of energy system, where basically we see that energy production, consumption will move to the local level, and from a big state-led or private firm that somehow operates a network or manages the production and distribution of energy, we go to different types of energy systems. And at the same time, we speak again of centralization and power dynamics. So who are the actors that in the end, after this process gets completed, will have the power of owning as much as possible of these decentralized systems, creating a decentralization process. So we have a lot of dynamics that are interesting for social innovation, top-down, bottom-up, bottom-link, and that will affect the energy systems management in the next years. We have technological and governing challenges that arise from that. And the social innovation now in the energy, the last 5-6 years that it started to be quite debated academically, has been perceived both as a process and a strategy that is needed to facilitate the energy transition, because the energy transition needs space, needs room, needs consensus, and social innovative forces can alter social conditions. So it is being a process and a strategy in the sense that we can see that by mobilizing social innovative narratives or socializing energy as a narrative, first of all, we have achieved behavioral change, individual and collective at the local level, where people somehow adopt a different lifestyle or adopt different position in terms of energy, or being informed that and understanding how energy is being produced and delivered to them, and by that they change their practices. And we know that behavioral change is part of the transition goals. Research on social innovation and energy has been increased. We've counted with my team around 16 projects, horizon projects that touch upon social innovation and energy from various realms: distribution, consumption, behavior, supply. And also they tackle the effects, or they elaborate over the effects in terms of what social innovation fundamentally does, which is covering needs that the market or the state cannot cover. So how social innovation and energy transition, for example, can tackle energy poverty and exclusion. Having said that, going back to the debate of being social innovation a process in the strategy, we have also the traditional innovation narrative. So we have people arguing that yes, social innovation is a vehicle that we can use for the energy transition because it promotes bottom-up innovation, it creates new local relationships and relational landscape. It's a catalyst for addressing issues of fairness at the local level, etc., etc. And that produces a mainstreaming of the narrative on the energy domain. Mainstreaming in the energy domain means that we have, again, questions that we have debated in other domains of social innovation coming in the energy field. So basically, rephrasing questions that maybe have been asked or answered in the past, but this time for the energy. The questions can be the scale of intervention, the socio-ecological impact, the speculation, questions around justice and equity, how social innovation addresses issues, if such. And based on that, for me, it is very important to have a common language in order to start answering things. And as it goes with social innovation in general, also in the energy sector, we have a variety of definitions around the concept. So Personally, I developed a definition looking on what is out there already, having in mind traditional SSH approaches to social innovation. And now I want to connect with one of the questions from Francesca. I want to speak about, after the definition, I want to speak about the paradox that we see in social innovation for the energy transition in relation to social innovation in general. I will just keep that in mind. I will go back to that very soon. So the definition itself, social innovation in the energy transition regards practices and processes that entail social, economic, technological, governance, or policy innovations that are capable to satisfy human and societal needs, underpinned by energy. Apart from satisfying needs, it has to contribute to a low carbon energy transition. So I personally, and most of the researchers, do not consider social innovations in the energy transition that do not take aspects of decarbonization seriously. So low carbon energy transition, not just energy transition, while in parallel empowering vulnerable social groups, cultivating civic traditions of trust, equity, solidarity, within and beyond the spatial context in which they occur. Why within and beyond the spatial context in which they occur? Because energy transition is a fundamental geopolitical field. Power games occur in local and in international level. We have countries depending on selling their energy to consumers abroad. We have consumers being paying the price of the energy. We have territories that resources are being extracted from them. We have violations of human rights. We have a huge geopolitical implications when it comes to energy relations, international and local. So the social innovation that happens at any part of the world should have in mind spatial context, both locally and globally, and geopolitics. I personally promote this because I believe in the global understanding of socio-environmental transitions. I think it's a quite inclusive term. It does not distinguish between targeting cultural interventions or material behavioral change, nor the type of processes and practices it refers to. As I said, it has a global perspective that balances approaches towards general well-being and self-interest, and promotes the social aspects, the transformative process of social innovation. Here, I want to speak a bit about what the literature so far says. So the question of Federica on what is exactly social innovation. So it is about it is about technological innovations, new market models, institutional setting changes, actor configurations, governance arrangements, nudges in terms of behavioral change, and the big elephant in the room, which are energy communities. That's the second thing I want you to keep, because energy communities, for me, represent a very big part of the research agenda and the narrative social innovation in the energy transition. So I want to speak about the paradox that I mentioned before. Social innovation in general means emerges when we have limits of markets and institutions and policymaking to guarantee adequate conditions satisfying human needs inclusively. Okay, but here is the paradox. When we speak about social innovation in the energy transition, we often see market fuel vehicles facilitated by top-down policymaking that trigger social innovations. What do I mean? and they are connected with energy communities. So what are energy communities? How energy communities came into place in practice? Why we speak about energy communities? Are energy communities an indication of social innovation? The paradox says that energy communities is something, it's an institutional form, a legal entity that came into practice in various countries around Europe, and there was no unified legal framework defining what they are. Are they non-for-profit? Are they for-profit? What exactly they do? And here we have actually top-down policymaking coming from the EU, and via two legislative procedures, two directives, the Renewable Energy Directive in 2018 and the Electricity Market Directive in 2019, introduced the concept of citizens' energy communities and renewable energy communities. And that means that is the first element of the paradox. So we have top-down actually intervention that creates fertile ground for social innovation to emerge via legal framework. Because what this legal framework does, it defines what is an energy community as a legal entity. It defines what it can do, which is the membership, which is the scope. It offers or it obliges member states of the EU to create a legal framework that will help energy communities to be developed, and has provisions in many aspects that help energy communities on the ground to start and flourish, like provisions in relation to its ownership structure or to its financing. So we have a legal framework that basically speaks about individual self-consumption. It speaks about collective self-consumption. It speaks about the energy citizenship, peer-to-peer trading. So we have a legal framework basically empowering local actors, citizens, community-level initiatives, and helps the decentralization that I spoke about before. And that constitutes one part of the paradox. The other part of the paradox is the market dynamics. So at the same time, social innovation emerges where market or state fails. In the energy, we see first that the state actually creates the framework for social innovation via enabling framework for energy communities. And what energy communities do, they take part in the energy market. We can say that they're obliged to, sure. But they also take advantage of the market in the context they can. So they somehow penetrate the market. They try to acquire market share, and they try also to be competitive in terms of energy pricing. So they use the market as part of their development strategy wherever they can. And that's the second part of the paradox I spoke before. Of course, the logical question is, are all energy communities a social innovation? Why I speak so much about energy communities. There is a conceptual leap on that, perceiving social innovation as direct or indirect consequence of energy communities. It's not its premise for sure, but somehow I tend I haven't really clarified that with myself, but somehow I tend to consider energy communities as by default social innovation, because they produce new types of goods. This can be energy goods, restoring privatized or monopolized commons. So the wind, the sun is a common. The land where systems operate can be a common. So it's quite innovative and fits the definition of social innovation. It empowers because it covers energy needs in an innovative way. It produces new social relations. People get together, they organize, they create a project. It cultivates traditions of trust, of cooperativism. It helps localities to adapt to structural changes. So usually energy communities, when you see through the prism of social innovation, you can see that actually it's very hard not to define them as a key pillar, if not the main pillar of social innovation in the energy transition. And what we have seen so far, and now we go down into research related to this, is that we actually have some first signals that, yeah, social innovation is social innovative community initiatives, let's say, in the energy sector, contribute to domains of employment, of wealth creation, reducing energy poverty, increase energy security, mainly in terms of awareness of sustainable practices, and very importantly, they challenge the status quo on the existing social and technical regime in terms of energy. We have seen that that is happening across Europe. What we don't know is the intensity. We have some research projects working on surveys of energy communities across countries and within countries. And from that, I can tell you that a large part of research projects really take into consideration, not sorry, research projects, but community level projects in energy. I can name them energy communities, some other people name them community action initiatives. In general, local level energy related initiatives, let's say. We have some data showing that a large part of them, around 3/4 of them, declare that they have ambitions, specific social ambitions regarding their community. More or less, we have differences from country to country. For example, in the Eastern Europe, the social goals are not so high in the agenda of these initiatives, while in the South or in the Central Europe, we have even specialized energy communities that work on energy poverty alleviation, for example, or consumers empowerment, etc. But there is a clear tendency of energy communities dealing with aspects of their community that makes them clearly being labeled a social innovation project. Having said that, I would like to go back a bit and speak a bit about why social innovation is, let's say, a vehicle that is important. It's important because we spoke about this decentralization and decentralization debate, and we can see that in the energy realm, people behave no different than others. So we have this tendency, this human tendency to stick to the default paradigm, because it requires a cognitive effort to move beyond to new preferences, to actions, to engage in new things and in new realities. There's a loss aversion culture. People, maybe they don't want to take part in decision making, or they like to delegate. They have a culture of delegation. So they prefer to stick to default. And default, I mean, from default energy provider to default mentality of not becoming or seizing the opportunity to become a prosumer themselves and become more independent in terms of their energy production and needs. So what we have is that we create a landscape where citizen needs to be in the center, needs to take initiative, needs to be nudged to be part of social innovation projects, energy communities, I would say, because as I said before, I tend to concentrate a lot my thoughts and work around them. So citizens are important. They need to be part. They need to be the base of these initiatives. And in some countries they do. But there is a huge network of stakeholders and power relations and actors in different levels that is not so visible when someone starts its journey into the energy empowerment, I would say. Who are they? At the local level, we have local governments and municipalities. They define the agenda in their own city, but at the same time, they don't have the power necessarily to implement things in the energy domain. Of course, citizens, we explain how and why. We have local companies and SMEs because they hold both lobbying power to prevent things from happening, but also the technical capacity to implement changes. Then we have universities and R&D centers that adapt technological innovation in relation to energy to the local environment and needs. You have social problems, local social problems, vulnerable households, environmental problems and conflicts. You have media as part of the stakeholder, let's say, group that are very, very important because they have a lot of power on agenda setting. You have environmental organizations and NGOs that sometimes they find themselves in a tricky situation where at the same time they advocate for cleaner energy, but in the local level they may oppose energy projects because they lack local environmental planning, appropriate planning. Then we go to national stakeholders. We have policymakers. Usually, nation states define the agenda for energy in a country. They have this power, not the local authorities and governments. You have the distribution system operators and the transsystem system operators, which are also kind of regulate and operate the energy market in the country level. You have the energy suppliers, the bigger corporations and companies that produce or manage or distribute or sell energy. You have financial institutions, which are very important because they are the funding organizations of any activity at any level, from big projects to small community level projects. You have international level. So we discussed before how at the EU scale contributed to the emergence of energy communities at the local level. So you have agenda setting also from the international sphere. And of course, you have technology providers, because usually the technology accompanying an energy project comes from another part of the world, usually, not only the materials, but also the technology itself. Now you will say, okay, you speak all the time about projects, but social innovation can be something that has no material project per se. That's true. Although the most visible part of it has, and we very often tend to focus on things that, in our mind at least, make more impact. So that's why also energy communities as an entity is very interesting for me. Going back to the stakeholders, we have formal and informal relationships, profit, for-profit and non-for-profit actors. We have public initiatives, we have private initiatives, we have a market, we have a state, we have a community, we have a big sphere of people, actors and organizations that all they want to take part or limit someone else's opportunity to be part of in the energy production, consumption, distribution. At the same time, you have the local context that limits options. Some areas that don't have enough capacity to generate the energy they need, or they don't have financial resources, or they have the legal framework that will allow social innovation initiatives to emerge. So that also plays a big role. And I want to go and speak a bit about the Greek case because I'm more familiar on that. Again, I will use the conceptual leap of associating energy communities with social innovation. And I would say that in Greece, there was the introduction of the energy communities law back in 2018. It created the legal framework that was very well accepted. We had hundreds of energy communities being operated or starting as legal entities. We had more than 400 or 500, I think, energy communities being created. The problem is that the creation of energy communities doesn't necessarily mean that they are operational in practice. So we observed the difficulties of projects going beyond the initial phase to the actual implementation phase. And on our survey that we did last September, in Greece, in 120, around 120 energy communities, only 10% approximately had actual moved forward from the initial stage to project implementation. So we see that in that particular national context, we had the legal framework, there was a lot of interest, but in the end, because of various reasons, not only financing, also governance issues, also technical issues regarding the relationship of the energy communities with the operator of the network. We don't have as much impact yet as we want, and on the other side, we also have kind of a threatening situation as the law on energy communities may change, and that law may change towards removing the protection of them. So now they will have to compete in the energy market along with private corporate investments to be part of the energy bids. So we have an institutional framework that is changing, that is also problematic for energy communities. And in the end, we do not have clear indication of where the energy communities projects and how we move on in Greece. What we know is that energy communities somehow they will be part of the energy system mix that we have in the future, that we have currently. We know that their role, bigger or smaller, will be there. We know that this is a social innovation per se. We don't necessarily consider them as actors that have clear social profile, or they are there just to meet and achieve social goals. They can be business, just a business model for someone. But nevertheless, as I explained before, they do have some fundamental characteristics that help to classify them as social innovative activities because of their empowering potential and because of the facilitation to participate into the energy, the new energy system. I don't know if my time is over. but I would really like to discuss. So I welcome questions, I welcome opinions, I welcome comments, and I try to see in my notes if I forget something from what Federica and Francesca asked.
Thank you very much, Giorgos. So I think that the debate can start if you have question. If not, me and Federica, we have already some ideas, some question to ask. So feel free to start or to wait a bit. Well, maybe I can start with a first question and then maybe also some other participant will ask something. So first of all, again, thank you very much, because your discussion was very clear, very interesting for me also, because I have a quite clear, let's say, really partial, but quite clear understanding of social innovation, but I don't know nothing about energy transition. So it was very interesting for me to try to understand the common path between these two terms, two concepts. Studying social innovation in another perspective, so more in the context of urban governance, I have tackled a critical aspects regarding who can afford to be involved in this kind of practices, processes, social innovative processes, let's say. Because, regarding communities that are involved in this kind of practices, people have to provide skills, to provide abilities, but above all, also to provide many voluntary time. And that's, in my opinion, the most critical, also in ethical terms, aspect. So regarding social innovation and energy transition, what emerged about that? Because in my context of studies, basically what emerged is that those who are involved in this kind of processes are generally the most affluent communities, or the more affluent part of a deprived community. But the most rich, the most affluent people can be involved in this kind of social innovative practices in general terms. So what do you think about that?
In a very simple way, yeah, you're right. Indeed, what we see, what we observe is that we have a very particular social group taking part in these initiatives, either as initiator or as the member of initiatives. And that is younger at least, educated people with environmental sensitivities, people that they are against or politically against the current system. So we have a mix of people that somehow match specific sociological profiles that they take part into these initiatives. And that's part of the challenge. So how a socially innovative initiative, if they want to claim the term, it engages not with middle classes, but with people that are actually in need, how they incorporate them in the projects, and in actual terms, what they do to help people that lack the power to do so on themselves. Now, the projects themselves often speak about energy poverty reduction. We have the system of cooperatives where they offer part of the energy production for free to vulnerable households. We have a debate which is very interesting. Who defines what is a vulnerable household and who chooses the specific households? And are those households part of an energy cooperative, or they can not be part, and the energy cooperative can give them energy for free, basically covering the energy needs? Or it can be another type of social innovation. It can be energy advice. It can be replacing their energy demanding appliances with newer ones. So we have different approaches. But in any case, who decides whom gets the benefit? That is something people are talking at this stage. And then we have the aspect of what part of your or how big is this contribution. So if we have, let's say, an energy community of 100 members, and these 100 members, there you have, of course, energy communities with low access barriers and energy communities with high access barriers. So we have energy communities that have, for example, a low fee to enter and become a shareholder of 100, 200 euros that many people can do. And you have energy communities that have 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 euros as an entry fee. So that somehow defines also who can be part of it. So it's an initial indicator of who belongs to this energy community and what's the social background of the people. But let's say that we take an example of an energy community that has easy access barriers. First of all, we have the people that have not necessarily the financial resources to become a member, but they have access to information to understand the energy transition, or to understand what is an energy community, or to understand why in the long term it's actually to their own financial benefit to be part of one. So that's a big gap, the access to information, and this is something that a lot of energy communities try to change in their neighborhood, in their hometown, in the local contexts. And in fact, the most successful of them are the ones that they start from that. Before they set up an initiative, they do communication campaigns. They take on board with them many people in the local society, and by doing so, they take also vulnerable households. But going back to how we define that, it is also a challenge of accounting. So you can have a rhetoric and say, yes, energy initiatives support vulnerable households. You can have qualitative research that says, yeah, we see that happening, but we need at some point to start with accounting and say X amount of households cover energy needs via contributions from energy community initiatives. And that is needed because it can support further the narrative of energy communities adoption. And I don't know if that answers the question, but for sure there is a problem when it comes to attracting people that are not necessarily fit the sociological group that usually is part of these initiatives. Is it a key issue? I would say no, in the sense that, in the sense that it can be a critique, but at this point, the most important thing is to create viable projects. As soon as you do that, you can attract more people in the project, and that's the important part.
Thank you.
I have a question. Hello. Hi, everybody. Hi, Francesca, Lorenzo, Umberetta, and Giorgos. We met already, I remember, a few years ago in the almighty course of Bruno Dente in public policy during our PhD.
It was a nice course.
Yeah, Very glad to hear you. I took some notes and I would like to discuss with you many points actually. I'm currently working on the topic of energy communities, especially in the Italian sector. I'm working together with the public body called RSE, that is the Research on the Energy System. In Italy, we are trying to map the initiative of energy communities. Because after the directive RED II in Italy, we have currently an experimental law on energy communities and also related policies that were established by the Department of Economic Development. And to be honest, I have to confess that we are, according to this survey that we are doing on several case studies, we're actually collecting more than 50 experimental case studies that are energy communities that were born after the current regulation, but also before, because in Italy we have a quite established, let's say, tradition especially in energy cooperatives that are, let's say, functionally speaking, energy communities, but not in the definition, in the ex lege definition of the current regulation. So we are very far away. I have to confess, from any potential of social innovation according to the actual regulation, because basically there is nothing connected to the rediscussion of the energy network and the energy market interests, if I can be really straight to the point, because the current policies are totally connected only to the concept of self-consumption, but in a very, let's say, very vague definition, and also all the issues that are present in the current regulation, and mainly technological issues. And this gives like a very, let's say, fragmented vision on the possible, let's say, social innovation potential of the energy community. When I talk about social innovation, I would like to stick to the definition of the Stanford Social Innovation Review. So the recombination of factors of production in a way that produce, let's say, social value, that redistributes social value. We are very far away from that. Also because the main issues are technological. We are having big problem in promoting energy community project because there is a major control of the market operators in the energy distribution sector that gives basically access to the I don't know how to translate in English. They are the cabin where the exchange between low tension and medium tension happens, and this is let's say a mandatory let's say accomplishment that community energy has to fit in. So if you don't have the right connection to this cabin, and if you don't have the authorization given by the distribution let's say monopolist, you cannot apply to the energy community incentives and the energy community framework. So this is giving like many problems, especially to actors that are less capable than others. So there is becoming like an adverse selection among actors, as you can imagine, and also there is a lack in the definition of any of social outcomes or social impacts connected to the energy community projects. So yeah, as I already told you, there are several technological issues. But there is not mandatory, and it's not, let's say, compulsory to have any energy survey on the actual community that is participating the community energy project. So there is no balance between the consumption and the production, or any connection with the households' economic structures. So the energy poverty topic becomes only, let's say, a label or a slogan with project, but there is no connection with an actual dealing with this issue that is a very concrete issue. According to the data of the Banca d'Italia in Italy, we have witnessed a steady growth of the medium expense in the energy for an energy expense in the families, in households in Italy. So this is becoming it's becoming a problem, and the energy communities, let's say, policy that it wanted to be, according to the EU directive, an interesting tool to deal with, let's say, sustainability of the energy sector, sustainability intended not only as environmental sustainability, because often the energy community project becomes only a way to, let's say, to tackle and to discuss about environmental problems, environmental and not social problems. So the agenda, the current agenda and the experimental regulation and policies are very far away from any, let's say, social innovation objective. We are witnessing to some experiments connected to the different stakeholders, but it's still very far away. But you know, we're looking forward. We're actually looking forward to see how the recovery plan will be implemented, because at the moment I have to disagree with Francesca, because there are many resources that can be invested in especially in the energy community sector, because let's say there is like a regular budget of €500 million every year for energy efficiency that can be used by local authorities as also for energy community projects, also to engage local communities and for startup for the startup phase, and also to invest in technology and whatever. But now with the recovery plan, €2.2 billion will be invested, especially in municipalities with less than 5,000 inhabitants. And actually the Piedmont region has been one of the most active region in advocating this kind of policies, because the Piedmont region has have more than 1,000 municipalities with less than 5,000 inhabitants. But we don't have idea on how these policies will be implemented. Recently, the government have published let's say, the governance of this recovery plan, but we are seriously looking forward to see if any element of social innovation will be introduced. Because at the moment, I have to, and I will repeat again, it's mainly becoming an affair of technology and not, let's say, a topic connected to any social impact or outcomes. And the situation, it's also, let's say, very complicated in terms of regulation, because sometimes regional authorities are producing, let's say, a different layout of regulation that sometimes introduce elements of social impact, sometimes not, sometimes more regulation, even more increase the cost of, in terms of, let's say, bureaucratic accomplishment. That is an issue. But if it's not connected to any, let's say, social outcomes, any intentional social outcomes, it's also it's an unuseful issue. With the private sector is of course very interested in this energy communities, let's say, new market that is developing right now. Cooperatives have been historically involved in the market, especially in the Alp region. There is a very well established tradition in community cooperatives that were born before the current energy network. But let's say the dangerous aspect of these energy community developments in Italy is the role of energy service company that are transforming their business in a promoter of energy communities, producing always the same model, same organizative model, as a business as usual model that can fit any local communities. And it's just a way, to develop faster the technology without any, let's say, ambition of producing social outcomes. Also, the corporation start getting organized, big corporation to enter the community energy market. Already the Enel company is trying to introduce some models that are, let's say, that are concentrated in that part of the company that is called NLX, that also aims to use energy communities to develop new technology, especially in the field of electric mobility. This is not a bad thing in itself, but it's bad if we don't produce policies that look in a wider perspective, the potentiality of energy communities. Started to discuss also the way in which these are connected to the energy systems, because if we don't take serious the rediscussion of the energy distribution, and also the promotion of certain technology that can be seriously disruptive, for instance, storage systems. And when I'm talking about storage, I'm not talking only about the electric storage, but also other forms of storage that can be also connected to other kind of technologies. It's impossible to think that we will create like thousands of let's say technological arrangements. We won't produce a serious, let's say, social impact and social innovation agenda. So rediscussing the energy systems is very important, and I'm looking forward to see also if the European Commission will take let's say a word about it, and also and critically to introduce social impact objectives into the regulation of energy communities, because usually the debate is strongly, let's say, the hegemony of the debate is strongly connected to the green economy aspects and the only environmental aspects, but we're still far away in framing organizative models that can be different, that can be suitable for any different local communities, and also specific social outcomes. They can be connected to energy surveys, local energy surveys, and the actual identification of energy poverty, not only as a label of projects, but as an actual, let's say, identification of problems in the local areas. And thank you, Giorgos. Giorgos.
Thank you. It's really nice to see.
I'm not sure I have focused a specific problem, but
I took 2-3 notes, which basically I can do some comments on it. The first thing is that social innovation per se is not, it's an abstract concept. So we should not expect a law per se on social innovation. It shouldn't be a legal definition of what is social innovative and what is not. That's why we use proxies. That's why we use social energy communities, which they have now representation in our legal system and economic system and social system, which is a very good proxy in terms of social innovation. Now, from country to country, we have difficulties and differences of how they operate these energy communities, what are the local legal frameworks that enable them or disable the powers. You put forward this, basically, you explain how difficult that is at the moment in Italy for energy communities to make a step further beyond self-consumption. And yes, I would agree there are a lot of technological issues. In some cases, there are technological issues that are, let's say, a result of power dynamics. In some cases, they are purely technical. So in some cases, we cannot provide a system that can be autonomous, or we can provide a system that can be connected to the grid, or we cannot generate smart grids the way we want them. In some other cases, we have technological debates that are part of power debates, because, for example, in storage, the particular technological lobby wants to promote batteries, while it might be more sustainable and cheaper to have pumped capacity. So we have different options in terms of which technology adoption should move forward for the storage. But when you said about financing, you said 2.5 billion.
2.2.
Yeah, that's not a lot. So if you divide it
Well,
the amount of municipalities in Italy,
it's 400,000 euros per municipality. That as a Kickstarter fund is not too bad. Consider the technological limitation. Currently, energy communities in Italy can be under the 200 kilowatt. So it's are very small. Very small.
It's as you say, a small push, but still it's not an amount that can generate broader impact, but still a small push. Yeah, that I think was my notes. Mainly, I'm interested a lot in the technological issues and the limitations and the opportunities, because we tend to neglect them, even if sometimes we have wishful thinking also of the potential of small-scale micro projects connected with each other and operating in a smart grid, but it's not necessarily always easily, from a technical perspective, to happen. So that's for sure something to discuss. And actually, there was a workshop where we had this discussion of the role of technology, in particular, in the social innovation in the energy. So more theoretical discussion of, is technology always there? And my point of view is that usually when we speak about energy related social innovations, there is some sort of technology involved. Maybe we don't speak about production, but even community awareness campaigns as part of social innovation project, somehow they use technology for the campaign or to communicate the message better, or to go and do some energy efficiency calculations in poor households, or provide new appliances. There is some sort of technology involved always, or not always, but most often. So the discussion about technology, ownership of technology, who has access to technology, how debates around technology adoption are communicated in communities that need to take a decision. There is a very, very, for me, big discussion that should take place around technology and social innovation for the energy in particular.
Thank you, Giorgos. I will ask the audience if there are any questions, other questions, because we still have some time and we need to calibrate a little bit the following part of the discussion.
Yeah, if I can use a few seconds of this time, it's a very interesting topic because of the potential it has. Because the social innovation, in this case, in the energy, fights a dual battle, let's say. The first is to convince citizens to participate. I also talked a bit about making them change their attitude and behavior and see what is there. And the second is fight over ownership. So on the one side, it wants to mainstream prosumerism, basically. On the other side, it needs to change power relations in another field. We live in the era where, at the moment, given that energy communities have a low market share in the energy generation and distribution, so far the second is not so visible beyond the narratives of the initiatives themselves. But it's not that far-fetched if we say that in 30 years from now, a large part of the energy produced in Europe will be a direct result of prosumerist behavior. And there, the power game and the power relations will be intensified further. And what is happening at the moment is laying the ground for this battle via legislation, via policy, via movements, civic society. So at the moment, this transition decade ahead will lay the ground of how the energy system will be, both from a technical perspective, but mainly in terms of ownership on the next 3-4 decades.
So I think I will go with a question that is in my mind from the very beginning. And what you've just said is a good point for letting me introduce the issue. So I really think that to fully understand, especially the social implication in a way of energy transition, there is a risk in a way that we should avoid of limiting the discourse from different points of view on the energy community discourse from one point of view, and then from the other point of view also from the local dimension of it. Because as you said from the very beginning, when you said the multi-level in a way characteristics of energy transition that is in a way embedded in it, it helps us in considering how the relation of the new relation that might be developed at the local level can be in a way influenced and influence other kind of relation at the super local level, and in relation not just to energy, the energy dimension, but also with other urban, more general questions. This is my main point, and I would like you to discuss a little bit, and then maybe we can go to the conclusion of the discussion.
Okay, basically that's the idea. I mean, the people working in the sector, they speak about that. They say that possesses transformative power for bigger systemic changes, either in the system of the city or the system of social structure. I'm not saying no. I'm saying let's see. We don't have. I'm also into. I was educated in being part of this kind of rhetoric. So small-scale initiatives, scaling up, organizing, bottom-up dynamics, creating systemic changes. For me, a key question is, what is a systemic change? What is the change that can say, yeah, actually this happened and we succeeded on this or not? Do we have a KPI on that? Do we say that if 50% of the energy produced and distributed comes from energy communities, that is a systemic change? If forcing municipal authorities to create energy communities that is a public-private partnership, where this time private is not a business, but private is the individual citizens, is that a systemic change or not? When we put the goal, when we put the end goal, what is the systemic change that we talk about? When we define that, I think then we can better explore the question, because I hear about large-scale transformation systemic changes, But then you have two sides of people: the ones that they don't want to, or they are afraid to mention what is that systemic change that they want to see, and the others that they do, but then somehow remain a very abstract and theoretical level on the how, both technical how and social how, reaching there. So for me, I would say yes, because that's how systems work. Yes, small scale changes can transform systems. Now it's a matter of pace, how fast, and it's a matter of to what extent and what degree something is considered systemic change.
Thank you. I ask again if there are any other questions from the audience.
I take the cricket sounds as a no. So I want to
Giorgos,
think,
you are very optimistic to consider 10 years for an actual transition towards energy.
No, I didn't say that. I say that the next 10 years are decisive into what type of level playing field we will have for the next decades. So the legislations and the initiatives and the policies that will be implemented the next decade, by 2030, will show us where energy communities will be in the next decades. There will be the key paradigm, they will be marginalized, there will be, I don't know, an actor that maybe in some central parts of Europe will have power and in the periphery they won't have. So in the next decade, I think we will have a very clear understanding of where the energy communities would end up in the history of the energy transition as a key player or more secondary and marginalized.
We have to, I think, and when I say have to, we as a planner, we have to, how can I say, advocate for our role in the, to sustain public administration, to give the, let's say, the right social innovation dimension of the community energy projects. There is what I'm seeing, like looking at the current, let's say, market of competencies that are connected to the energy community sector. Most of the time, engineers are very well, let's say, positioned in the market, because they produce like models that are very easy to implement because are mainly technical solution, like posing only on using only a methodology for energy survey that is connected to efficiency and not to justice, not connected to any, let's say, social aspects. Participatory projects on energy community are usually driven by the idea that you need to like go fast, you know, to complete the project and to have access to incentives and to feed in tariffs. Not an idea of like actually, you know, having a creative process, you know, that can recombinate the factors of production, in this case of energy, of local energy. So the pledge that I would like to give to my colleagues that are present here to listen this very interesting, let's say, contribution of Giorgos is we need to pay much attention to this subject, because we need to advocate our role with local authorities and compete with engineers, maybe collaborate with engineers, because most of the time, you know, their role is essential, especially for energy surveys, of course, not for the strategy of doing a local energy survey, but only to, for the, let's say, the minimum condition of technical efficiency. But there still is let's say, a discretionary power of local administration to drive more socially innovative projects if they see that value beyond the economic efficiency performance of the project. They can use that community energy development as a way to produce an actually community energy project, because most of the time they're conceived as a community electricity project, but community energy means much more than a community generation strategy. I think we can also learn a lot, like looking at the practices of microgrid development in the global South countries. Thanks to the fact they were freed from the centralized network of energy transmission, they were able to produce like very innovative projects in terms of social innovation. If we look at that market, we can see much more social innovation than the European market, because they've done what in literature is known as leapfrogging. So due to the fact that they don't have like a established power relation in the energy market, in the technology market, they were able to experiment more. So in rural communities in Kenya, there is more social innovation. Microgrid in rural communities in Kenya, there is much more social innovation than in an energy community of Ventotene. That is a model, isomorphic model that was sold by the Politecnico di Torino, the engineer team, energy lab of Politecnico di Torino, like already made solution, good for public administration to get freed from responsibility of taking, let's say, any creative decision, but to access to incentives in the faster way possible. And without any effort in particular participatory projects, just like with a couple of meetings that were already that the main player were already engaged because of the efficiency discourse, because these process were led by engineers and not by planners or other, let's say, social scientists. So I would like to give this final pledge to my colleague and researchers. Please, let's try to be more stick to this field, because many like a lot of money will come. I know Giorgos, that for you probably 2.2 billion are few money, but for us also having like a consultancy contract of 20K, it's a lot. we are more than welcome to help local authorities to try to establish, let's say, a proper let's say participatory, accessible process in establishing a community energy project that are not only technical, but they can be, they might have a potential on social innovation. And usually, I was also discussing with Francesca before about this. Planners that are involved in let's say advocating planning with local communities are usually struggle to have money, because usually let's say local communities are involved in market failure sectors, projects like community tourism or heritage valorization with cultural activities, that we are usually struggling to have money also to advocate these groups. But in this case, a lot of money are coming. Local authorities, they already have an annual budget of €500 million euros every year that are enough also to establish a community energy strategy. There are more money are coming with the recovery plan. So please, guys, let's stick to the subject that can be an important horizon for planners that are especially planners and researchers that are interested in advocating local community groups, community-based organization, and fostering social innovation strategies at the local level. Sorry about this very long intervention, but it was really inspiring, all of this.
Thank you very much, Luca, for this very passionate discourse. We will absolutely take care of your words. And I don't know if there are a few people left. So I don't know if some of you have a final comment. If not, we can stop here. thank you very much for your time, for this very interesting discussion. Before to finish, I just would like to remind you that next week, same day, same times, our colleague Allegra Eusebio will speak with her guests about community mapping. So if you are interested in this, please reserve your place on Eventbrite. And thank you, Giorgos, really, for the nice discussion. And yeah, I think Federica, if you have the final word, and then we can stop here. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you very much from my side to Giorgos, of course, and to all the audience and the people who were happy to discuss with us today. It was very inspiring, and I hope there will be any other chances to discuss about this issue, because I see that we share many points, and for future discussion will be interesting, I guess.